Welcome to another episode of Mr. Therapist and the Counselor Podcast. We are your guide to personal recovery, whether you're dealing with an addiction, a mental health issue, or you're just trying to figure some things out in life. We empower your growth and demystify the process of therapy.
You got it, bro.
I got this. My name is Manny Romero. This is Jesse O. And we got a special guest, Elizabeth Gallo.
I like Liz. Thank you.
Liz. She goes by Liz. And she's got a practice, Resilient Lotus Psychotherapy.
Yes,
and you can follow her on Instagram at Resilient Lotus. Right? That's
Psychotherapy.
At Resilient Lotus Psychotherapy. We'll put it in the handle and everything in the description. Jesse O.
Here we go.
All right,
We're here on the No Mistakes podcast.
No mistakes. Jesse gets so mad. Liz knows. She's been witnessing. Jesse's been on a rant. He's such a grumpy old man.
Grumpy old man.
What was it? After you were 55, you started just like getting a little more grumpier?
Yes. Yes.
We gotta be balanced, guys.
Yeah.
Balance.
You were
Remember.
saying, Liz, before we started this, you were talking about being perfect. You said there is such thing as perfect?
No, like I'm saying, perfectionism is a thing.
It's a thing,
It's just
okay.
not attainable.
Got it. It's
100%.
not attainable, right?
100% of the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. So.
Well, she was validating that you were have
Really?
such perfecting standards.
No, not me.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't.
No,
I don't know. That's not
No,
what I
you're
was
not. Never
witnessing.
mind.
I don't know.
You're perfect.
Perfectly screwed up is
we-
what I am. So
We have a guest today, Liz Gallo, and
Yes,
Liz
sir.
is at LMFT.
Mhm.
And you have your own practice. You just started, right?
Yes, it's in the beginning phases.
That's so exciting.
It is.
Yeah.
It's-
Did you always want to know that you wanted to do your own thing, or?
No, so even when I got into grad school, it always felt very daunting, and like I don't know the business aspect of things.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, I'm never gonna. I'm like, I was very adamant that it was never gonna happen, and it wasn't until like probably like a year or so ago I started to really like, I wonder, because I got into a group practice.
Yeah.
So probably in the last year I got a little bit more serious about it, and I was like, okay, I feel like I can.
Go ahead, buddy.
real
I gotta
quickly,
check
just
these
for
levels.
anybody that's out there, like, what's a group? What do you mean by group practice? Just for like the people that are like, what?
So a group practice is where, again, like it's owned by somebody else.
Okay.
And they hire different therapists, so that it's more than one person.
It's kind of like the Avengers. What Avenger would you be?
Nothing like
No,
the
not at all.
Avengers.
I was trying to really hype up this crew. You
No,
know,
but
so.
it's kind of like, what's the team that the guy with the eye patches on?
Pirates of the Caribbean. That's not a team, dog.
From the Avengers.
Oh, Nick Fury.
Nick Fury.
Yeah, it's like his company.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It makes more sense though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You-
he
you
hires
need,
the
You
Avengers.
need Avengers references to understand this
Yeah, but
process.
basically, you got to dumb it down real
So
low, bro.
it can involve like only licensed therapists. Some people do licensed and associates. But part of the selling point is so that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And usually the owners will handle the admin aspect. And even at where I work now, they fill my caseload. So
Yeah.
those are kind of like the benefits.
Gotcha.
And there's usually like with the pay a split. So like a 60-40, 70-30, depending on what's offered. But
Yeah, and it's probably just easier that, like, if you're getting started, just for people to find you, it's like you get clients a little bit faster and whatnot,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome, but congratulations. It is a very scary process to start your own.
I
your
know.
own-
I almost quit when I was trying to even get the business license because I
Yeah.
was hitting some bumps, and I almost gave up. But the last
Yeah.
time I did it, it took me like 2 or 3 tries, and I was like, okay, because I at the third time I was like, if it doesn't work, I'm gonna take a break. I wasn't giving up, but I was gonna take a break.
That's crazy.
But it worked out, and I have just a virtual practice right now.
Yeah.
Hence the resilient part right there, right?
Resilient.
So, yeah.
So when
Yeah.
I was starting my practice, I was going through the same thing, a lot of obstacles, and I remember I was working full time at the time, and I was like, okay, I got to start the practice. I got to open up an S corp or a LLC, and I was trying to go through that process, and I went through a couple people that kind of like duped me, and they were like, yeah, we'll set you up and just pay us like $2,000 and we'll handle it all. And I paid them, and like 3 months later, I'm like, hey, dude, where is my like business
Oh,
license,
wow.
and they didn't have anything for me. So I remember going through that and feeling so discouraged. Then I had this call with somebody who's like a very, he knows his way around business. And he was like, why are you trying to open an LLC or an S Corp? I'm like, well, I want to start a business. He's like, if you want to start a business, just start doing what you want to do. He's like, all that stuff is just for paying taxes. Like, you can figure that out later. So I'm like, oh, you can do that? So I just started just practicing.
I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah. So I mean, because we don't know, we're not business people. We're just walking into this business world sort of like unequipped and blind. But it was like nice because I was like, okay, well then I'm just gonna start printing business cards and getting my and
You're
then like
getting this shit rolling.
I'm just gonna get it rolling. And I got my first client, and then afterwards I was like, okay, now how do I? And I figured everything out. So
No, see, we're kind of opposite in that sense. I have to go in order.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I had to figure out the business license, and I had to do like a DBA because of the name. And I couldn't move on to the next. So after I did that, I did my business card,
Yeah.
and then I set up my pages, my directory. So like I kind of have that track of like doing things in order. And if I can't figure something out, like I have to figure it out.
Yeah. I'm like that naturally. I feel like that's because we went to school and they've trained us to like, you got to like do this, then this, you know?
Yeah.
So it kind of like, yeah, it's good it's a good skill to
Going
have,
back to
yeah,
perfectionism, it's
yeah.
kind of it's a touch
Exactly.
of that.
No, for real.
Yeah.
So having Liz on the podcast, anytime we bring on an LMFT or anybody that's in the field, we always want to ask the question, why? Like, why do you do this? What draws you to the field? What ignited the fire, I guess, for you?
Yeah, that's a deep question.
Here we go.
She told you not to start deep, dog.
You did the whole thing, the spiel.
No, no,
Oh, wait a second.
It's no, it's fine, it's fine. No,
Wait, can you give me the answer in Spanish though?
no, I can't. That's not happening.
Okay.
Sorry.
Gosh, way to put her under pressure.
No, we missed the whole spiel. Where we're gonna
We
do? Yeah,
did.
you got yeah.
We got to do that on the next episode.
next podcast. Yeah.
So to answer your question, I was 13. We had career day.
That's a young age.
Yeah, and the principal's sister came in, and she was a social worker.
Principal's sister?
Yeah.
Oh,
Of,
okay,
of the middle school where I was.
I was like, did you go to Catholic school? Like,
No, the principal's. Sorry, the middle school's the principal's sister. I think I missaid that. And she talked about being a social worker, and I was like, oh, that sounds really nice. Like the idea of helping people. And that's the first time I got an introduction to anything like that. So something got ignited. Like I got like excited about it. I don't have like specific memories, but I just remember something was happening about when I heard about it. So that's when it started. But to answer more of like the why, I was born with a disability called cerebral palsy. And then at 7 years old, I unfortunately lost functioning in one of my kidneys. Wow. And at 11, I developed epilepsy, which a lot of people with cerebral palsy end up developing. Okay. Epilepsy, because what happens is it's like damage to the brain. For me, I'm a twin, so there was just not enough space, I sense. So, yeah. And just kind of, again, I like to educate people because they don't know a lot about the disabilities.
Yeah, please do it, like,
so
in this moment.
The why is kind of like, shit was hard. Like, I had a lot of medical appointments. I was teased. I had to do things that my siblings and other kids didn't have to do, like physical therapy. My mom would get on me about water. And it was just like, I can't have, Coca-Cola. So it was like all these like little things, but it all piled up. And some of the procedures were kind of traumatic that I had to go through. Because I also had surgery at 7. So it was a lot. It was really overwhelming. And I don't think that my family had the tools necessary to like tend to me emotionally. I'm assuming, I'm pretty confident that I know it was a lot for them too.
Sure. Yeah.
There was probably some discomfort in seeing the pain that I had to go through, and it was distressing for them. So again, I always like to validate that parents and family members do the best that they can. But it was just a lot, and I don't feel like I was managing it well. So in a sense, part of my wanting to get into this work is to be for people what I felt I needed. And that's for, I have clients that are teenagers. That's really special work for me. So that's part of my
Wow.
my why.
What is that? I don't know if it's simple to define that, but like what is do you feel like you needed, like going through all that?
Like validation,
Mm,
empathy,
yeah.
coping, you know.
Yeah.
I my little brain could not understand why all those things were happening to me at one
Yeah.
time. It felt really unfair. It felt like life was against me for a really long time.
Wow.
It didn't stop then, you know, because then it, you know, started to become difficult to get employment. I was working at Walmart for 10 years.
Wow.
I couldn't get out because one of the barriers that I can speak to is I have to take medication, so I can't be without insurance. And, you know, it's easy for people without medical conditions to be like, I'm going to leave this job and do this one, even though I might not have insurance. So I would get stuck at Walmart because, you know, you have to wait like 3 months. Back then it was different. They do it a lot faster now.
Like the probationary period.
Yeah,
before,
like, again, I felt restricted.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of feeling of restriction. And again, I just don't think that like my family really understood what that was like for me.
Yeah.
It was very frustrating. And then, you know, even socially with like dating, there's discrimination, you know, people don't understand and they make judgments. So it was in all these different facets that I was having this different experience. But with my family, I was just Liz.
Mm.
But I was at this point, like I try to explain to them, like I'm this way for you, but when I walk out into the world, my experience has been different.
Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine just like as like you said, the 13, 11-year-old girl, like trying to process just that the world's against me, like how heavy of a experience, right? And that's so awesome that you could draw some inspiration from that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and honestly, like I've always said that when things got really rough, because I can tell you it got pretty dark for me sometimes,
Yeah.
but what always kept me going was wanting to help people.
Wow.
It always was the goal, and I was like, I know I need to do that. I don't know how it's going to happen or if it will happen, but like that would motivate me to keep going.
I was gonna say I have a couple questions during the 10 years like at Walmart. Were you just kind of like, was that like the end goal? Was like or were you slowly like working towards that?
I was getting my bachelor's at that
Okay,
time,
gotcha.
but it took me 8 years to get my bachelor's degree, so it took me double the time.
Yeah.
I was not the best student.
Yeah.
So when I say like things were not easy for me, it's like a lot of things were not easy.
Yeah.
You know, because my twin and my older sister would always get like the good grades. I was always like the one to get C's, and that was like me getting an A. So for me I'm the only one in my household that's gotten a master's degree.
Wow.
So
Dude.
it's just kind of crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Like what's happening right now in my life is really insane because it's beyond anything I would have imagined happening for me.
Wow. I love that story. I mean, there's so much resilience in that story.
And I even have a lotus tattoo. That's where the name of my business started.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there I don't know about plants too much, but lotus is a plant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lotus.
It's like a flower.
It's a flower. What connection is there? A connection with lotus and like resilience and your story?
So the thing with the lotus is they say it grows through mud, which is like shitty like situations.
It's not the best environment.
Yeah, and despite that, like it still grows into the beautiful flower that it is.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that is essentially like what I feel my life has been.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. What? Just kind of wondering. I don't know. I remember going through getting my bachelor's and sort of looking for guidance as to like what I wanted to do with my psychology degree. And there'd be people pushing me towards LMFT and then people pushing me towards LCSW and kind of feeling confused as to like which one do I go. There's so many good arguments for and you said you talked to a social worker, but you are an LMFT, right?
Yeah, no, the social worker when I was when I was 13, so that was like my introduction. Okay.
So did you have that conflict as well, where you kind of like wondering which route you wanted to go to? Or?
Honestly, it didn't end up becoming a conflict. Let me tell you the story, which is another important element to my story. again, that was my introduction. So I did up until getting to Cal State Fullerton want to be a social worker. I was going to work at DCFS.
Okay.
Supposedly. But then
that's Department of
Children and Family Services.
Okay, Children and Family Services.
As like social worker for kids that like get removed and things like that.
Okay.
Wow.
But then in Cal State Fullerton, they have this class called Character and Conflict. And oh my gosh, it changed my life. So what it is you walk into the classroom and the professor starts telling you about his life. I had a professor that was like he was like a hippie man, but like in a cool way.
Yeah.
So he was like really open about his life, and then at the end of the class, he split us up into groups of 8.
Okay.
And each group went into a separate classroom, and you sat in a circle. And then there was 2 people that had taken the class the year before, so they were facilitating the group this year, or the year that you're in it. So there's facilitators and there's members, and he would present books for us to read or topics, and we would have like open-ended, like deep conversations about life. And I even remember he had us write on a piece of paper like what was missing from your childhood, like something that you didn't get during childhood.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's what we talked about in the class in the group that day. So then I became a group facilitator, and in that process you start learning about the theories. And I really was drawn to Adler.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was over after that. Like from that class to learning about the theories, I was like, nope, therapy's where it's at. That's I like the intimacy of it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I had I was going to become a social worker as well. And I remember touring all these, like, I went to like 5 different interviews to get into like a master's program. I chose 5 social work schools and 1 MFT school because people were telling me at the time, better to go social work. There's more job opportunities. LMFT is a little more constricted as to what you can do.
But it's not really the truth.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, actually, maybe it was the truth back then. I don't know. But now I feel like we're kind of
a lot of jobs will say
looped into the
LMFT
same,
or LCSW.
Or LCSW. So I wonder if it wasn't that way before. And then I went to all these like social work schools, and I was like, this is cool, like exciting. And then I went to an LMFT interview, and like they were presenting the program, and I'm like, no, this is it right here. It was like in social work, you're gonna learn about like
case management,
like legal stuff, admin stuff, like state. I'm like policy. I'm like, what? And then like, oh yeah, we have like 5 therapy classes too that you're gonna take. And then in Chapman, they were like, couples therapy, family therapy, child therapy. I'm like, that's where it's at right there. So.
And it's funny because I was set on Long Beach because they had a really good social work program. Yeah. And I was bummed that I didn't get in. I went to Cal State because I didn't have a choice. Cal State Fullerton.
Yeah.
But life was trying to take me there.
Yeah.
So,
So part of our podcast is we like to we demystify the process of therapy by showing people therapists behind the face of therapy, right? Like therapists are people too.
I say that in sessions all the time.
And we struggle, and we have problems. We go to therapists to see, so we're human, and that's probably what makes our work so great with people is that we have that relatability. What have you ever seen a therapist at all? Have you
several
worked on
times?
Stuff? Yeah.
Yes.
Do you? Would you talk a little bit about like your experience with that? Just like I guess we like to know, if. Like what your beliefs were about therapy, maybe before you started seeing your therapist, and how that process was for you the very first time you went to therapy.
I mean, I don't ever think I had negative beliefs about it because again, I've always been sensitive. I've always been like inquisitive, so I don't think I had any negative beliefs around it. But like when I hadn't done it, the first time I did it was at Cal State Fullerton. I just didn't know what to expect. But I knew it was the intention was for it to be helpful. Yeah. So I was nervous when I first would go.
How old were you when you started?
If I was at Cal State Fullerton, so it's got to be like early 20s.
Oh wow.
Or mid 20s.
Yeah.
I forget how old I was when I was there.
Yeah.
But Yeah, so but the one thing that I like to speak to is I've only had one therapist that really helped me, and out of the few that I've seen, like as far as it being like transformative for me.
Would you say those other times were there bad? I mean, not bad experiences, but something didn't click for you.
There was a couple that were bad.
Okay.
And there was a couple that were supportive, but they just didn't take me to like
any good
the
stories
next level.
with the bad. You
What
don't have to.
No.
Even
but-
like what?
We want the name of the therapist and the story, license number too.
I think the reason I want to bring that up because some people will find a therapist and it's almost like they'll either stay with a therapist because it's like
This is what it is.
Yeah, all right. Or maybe I made so much effort. I'm like, this is what therapy is. So instead, people do have some really poor experiences with therapists. And I don't want to say there's.
No, I hear scary stories.
Yeah, and I say this. I mean, I'm not trying to shit on the field, but like there are people, there are bad therapists out there. I've worked with them. I've seen them. Like they're tacked, and I'm just like, you are basically showing somebody this is what it is when it isn't. So like.
But yeah.
And there's levels. There's bad therapists because maybe they're like burnt out. They never address their burnout.
Yeah.
They don't have a good sense of like, am I good to become a
stuff,
therapist right now?
or their stuff isn't just worked through.
Their stuff
enough.
isn't worked through.
Right.
And then there's also therapists that aren't bad, but they're just not for us, right? And like every
Right fit.
therapist has a different style, so we're not counting on everyone,
But with one of the bad ones, it wasn't anything like juicy.
Yeah.
But she seemed really distracted, like she was writing notes or something.
In the middle of the session.
And I write notes
Yeah.
in the middle of my sessions, but like all my clients, I check in with them and they're like, you can't even tell. Or if the client's crying, like I don't.
You don't write about
I stop.
the way they're crying.
No, like I take the notes after.
Yeah.
But she just seemed really like distracted.
Mm-hmm.
And I had another therapist, which is one of my more recent ones, where I was talking about opening up, trying to figure out stuff for the business, and it seemed like she was trying to take notes for herself. Like she didn't know any of it, so she was trying to get information from me about it. And I'm like, oh, no, this is a no-go.
That's crazy.
Really, real quick, I was gonna ask, just like she's a little away from the microphone. Do you think she should move
She's
in?
good.
She's good. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
She's good. I checked her already.
All right, good deal. Good deal.
Okay.
So we're just checking. Yeah. So we keep going.
That's so funny. Like, I had a client come to me one time, and I always like to ask, like, when someone's been to therapy before, I'm like, what was your experience like? Just to gauge like what they didn't like, what they liked, to see if one, if we're gonna be a good match, and two, if there's something I can incorporate in therapy to like make it a better experience for them.
Sure.
And so one time someone's like, yeah, like my old therapist, like, and she was a cute little old lady, and she was sweet, but she would always fall asleep on me. I'm like, that's the worst.
Wait, narcolepsy? Like just straight dropping or what?
I guess she would just like always knock out, like in therapy. She did like the what is that the Weekend at Bernie's,
I'm just thinking like they tied her up and like she was just like there.
I would be really concerned and stressed for that person's well-being in the middle of the session if they're falling asleep. I might want to call like an ambulance.
I
Like,
know.
Like,
yeah.
I got problems. You got some serious medical problems right now.
But to speak to what you were saying about like sometimes clients will
stay.
they'll tolerate that, right? They'll stay because they just think they're like, this client was like, yeah, like I just wanted to give her chances, and like I felt bad for like leaving. I'm like, don't feel bad for leaving. Like, this is your time.
That's literally something I tell all my new clients. I tell them, look, like I am not everybody's cup of tea.
That's good.
So if you don't like how things are going, obviously try to talk to me about it. But I don't want you to stay with me if I'm not the best fit.
Yeah.
I will find you a better fit.
That's cool.
I also, when I hear things that are like reportable, I'm like, let me educate you on the BBS and what that process looks like.
Yeah.
But again, I wanted to highlight that like it's not just therapists. There's like bad apples even within the medical field in general, like doctors. So,
Hates doctors.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I just feel no. I just it's a sense of like I think people really trust in doctors.
Blindly.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times it's just they look for
answers.
Yeah, and it's just
Not all good guys
no.
wear white.
Yeah, I would say the white coat kind of gives us people a false sense of security, I guess, and it's just like people.
Well, it's even with us though. Like we don't have a code, but like people come to us and they expect us to like kind of fix everything.
Yes,
and it's
exactly.
Like we don't always know everything.
Give me advice. Like it's
Yeah.
kind of like no, like
Yeah.
I can't help you that way. You
Yeah.
know. So.
What was it about your therapist that you found that was good and transformative for you? What was there anything in particular that made it transformative for you, or I don't know if you don't have
There's
to go into
one.
details,
There's one
but-
particular moment, but I think it's important to mention that she was an associate therapist.
So she wasn't even licensed.
She was not
Yeah.
licensed yet. And she was I think maybe younger than me. I don't know how much younger or close to me in age, but I think younger. But
Was
anyway.
that discouraging for you? Like not.
No,
like,
I'm highlighting
initially.
these.
Was it like I don't know?
So it's always a hesitation when I don't have a person of color, and she was Caucasian.
Okay.
But her age, not really.
Okay.
Because I was an associate at the time too, and I thought I was pretty, solid as a therapist.
Yeah.
Not perfect, but just solid. And we had a session one day, and again, I've always been sensitive, and I started to really feel like, I don't know, like that wasn't the way to be. I had like a negative association with it, because I can easily cry about things. And one day she just told me, she's like, Liz, she's like, have you ever thought that that's actually like a demonstration of you being an evolved person, and that like you can express your emotions as they arise, and that people can actually benefit from you like moving closer to how you are.
Wow.
Like this thing that is like you and who you are is not a bad thing.
Wow.
Something to that effect.
That's really cool that you said. I kind of had seriously a similar experience this week with somebody who was like, I cry way too much, and I was just like, that's something I think to admire and almost I look to, because so many people are blocked with that, like they can't get to that. But the fact that maybe you can experience that emotion, I think that's just like it's freeing. There's just so much power in
Ever
that.
since that session, something clicked, and I like felt this sense of empowerment. I was like, no, like fuck this.
I'm
like,
fucking great. Like
this is awesome. It still creeps in, but like not. It doesn't overpower me as much.
Yeah, but she like shifted your ability to see this trait. Like you saw it as a negative thing, and it's something you wanted to fix, quote unquote,
or get rid of. Yeah.
And for her to like show it to you in a way of like, this is beautiful. Like this is an amazing trait. Like that is so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me and my wife, we do couples therapy, and we had we were doing it with this therapist that we both really like, and she was skeptical about it, therapy as it is, but my therapist was able to highlight one of her traits. She's not very like emotionally. She doesn't need to talk about emotions as much as I do, And so like I was kind of like saying, yeah, like she's just not like talking about her emotions very much. And my therapist goes like, well, yeah, I mean you're more like emotionally independent. Like you're you kind of. And Abby was like, oh my gosh, she fell in love with like that statement. She was like, yes, like he didn't make me feel like there was something wrong with me. I was like, that's a win for therapy, like she was more bought into the process. So
yeah, that's a tough difference to navigate, and it doesn't just happen in romantic relationships, because I am like that. Like I need to process.
Yeah.
And I do have people in my life that are like, just kind of like skip over. I don't need to talk about it, or it doesn't need to be that big of a thing.
Exactly.
But it's like it's taken me time, but it's coming to this place of like we're just different. No one way is right or wrong.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up something just based on like your initial experience with therapy. Growing up, I know you said your parents did the best they could, right? But was there any like encouragement? Like it seems like you came up with this idea. I want to help people, obviously based on just your upbringing and your life and what you experienced. But did you see any examples in your family dynamic with people going to therapy, or where was the encouragement for you to like enter this field, or was this just like a kind of thing that you were like I'm gonna hold on to this and I'm gonna do this?
So for the field itself, I didn't have anybody around me that was in it or
Examples
trying to be in it.
right? Okay.
No, because my dad is. But just to kind of answer your question a little bit in another way, my dad is a gardener and a landscaper, and he came from Mexico.
Okay.
So I've always kind of acknowledged him in the sense of my work ethic, because he hustled really hard, and he came here at like 18, and we didn't really see him growing up because he was always working, and now like the generational wealth that he's established for our family, like it's on his hands. And watching him kind of helped me, I think, to have that drive as well. Yeah, I think the choice of the mental health field is all me.
Yeah. Okay.
And just like what I was experiencing outside of my family.
I was going to ask her. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. You got a question, buddy?
Yeah, questions.
Go. Let you go.
Well, I want to more transition to like the clients that she works with and
That's
like
all I was
okay.
gonna go
What?
Look at you guys thinking.
I love him.
All right, I love you. This is on the podcast.
I'm enjoying this bromance.
So
So you go first.
no, you go first.
You hang up. No, you hang up.
Yeah. So are you specializing in working with clients with disabilities, or what is your like niche that you're drawing to here?
So instead of making it a physical disabilities niche, it's chronic illness.
Chronic illness. Okay. Yeah. And what's that been like for you? Like what kind of clients are you seeing?
It's honestly, so initially I had the thought of physical disabilities, but with the supervisor I had while I was getting my hours, she guided me towards like considering chronic illness. I just had never had clients with chronic illness before. So once we decided like we were going to give that a try, we got some referrals and I got some clients with her. And I started realizing like, oh wait, like the themes are physical disability or chronic illness, like the themes were the same. So there was the element of my personal experience, but like me seeing that the themes were the same, I was like, oh, I really have an avenue here. So it's interesting because it allows me to challenge them in a way that somebody that doesn't have a condition can't.
Yeah.
Because it's easy for us to go into the space of like, how are you trying to tell me what to do when you've never had to walk what I'm going through?
Yeah.
But working with this population has its challenges, because it can take a while to get through.
Yeah.
Because again, we all do things that protect us from not wanting to, but getting to a different place.
Yeah.
But no, it's been really meaningful, even though there's some like challenging aspects.
Yeah.
I'm able to do some really good work.
I think as a therapist, it's, at least for me, it's super important to, be able to, like you said, either have something in common or either have something in common where I can feel comfortable like challenging someone on an issue, or at least having enough experience to have worked with this certain thing or problem or population or whatever, to where I can feel that confidence too. Because there are, like, I think one time I had a client who struggled with chronic pain, and it was really tough for me to kind of like, I don't know where to go with this. A part of me I don't understand this enough to be able to to be like, well, what can you do? Like, if you can't go to the gym, right, because you have this chronic pain in your back, like what can you do? I don't even know if that's the right way to go with that client, but like, but I'm sure if I had that experience, maybe I would feel a little more comfortable challenging on some of these ideas. Or,
well, I think what can happen is they feel stuck.
Yeah.
And then we feel the stuckness.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I have felt that stuckness even outside of chronic illness, but that can be a theme that's present. And it can be overwhelming because you're like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Right? Because we have this thing that we can't change. But again, a big piece of it is validating them. Like, I validate for a long time. It's like an ongoing process because a lot of times, again, that's what people are missing. Again, because people don't understand what the experience is like, so it's easy to go into solutions.
Everyone wants to fix it.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to.
So it's just really hearing them out, giving them the space to like describe what the experience is, and I fucking get it, dude. It's I say it all the time, like it's fucking frustrating, right? Like whatever the thing is that's going on. But I also try to move clients into acceptance because we can't change it, and if we're not accepting, we're causing distress.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of the things that I sort of work towards.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me of the recovery field. We've worked in recovery at times.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times there is this experience that people in recovery have that they're different because they'll never be able to drink again or use, even if it's recreationally, like marijuana or whatever it is. And there is almost this feeling of like, if you are quote unquote called a normie, that you've never struggled with an addiction, right? And you drink and you can drink one drink and not go overboard. You have this pushback of like, well, what do you know? Like, how can you tell me like that things are going to be okay? Or how can you give me advice if you don't know what that's like? And so I've experienced that for sure on that end of things.
Yeah. But I think, as humans, I've talked about this before where we can make ourselves so fucking special.
Yeah.
In the way that it's detrimental. Like nobody fucking can understand me. Nobody gets what I'm going through.
My problems are so bad.
Yeah, like they're so unique that I'm so alone. But our conversation just now proves that there's elements that are the same, even though the issue or the difficulty is different. And that's what I try to help clients in these chronic illness spaces understand. Like, even if it's not physical, people have emotional hurts or, again, like sobriety. So like there's so many different things that distress us as people. If you just open up to the idea that you're not so alone, you can get that connection. Yeah.
You guys think it's too harsh to call that like sort of being in a victim mentality, or does that feel really harsh to say?
No, I don't think it's.
I don't think it's harsh. You got to be mindful of where people are on their journey. I think
if how those words are gonna move somebody. Yeah, for sure.
I think the idea of we get stuck in things. Everybody's been hurt. I don't want to say everybody, but a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people have been hurt. They've been a victim of something. It's something what you do with that experience. You can continue to play in that, or you can ultimately grow. Just like all of us, we all have the opportunity. Obviously, most of us have an opportunity to grow from something and make, I guess, the best of that. I mean, in a lot of ways, you were handed something you never asked for, right? And so, what do you do with it? You found a way. So
it took me a long time, though.
It did. I
was probably like, I think I shifted a lot, probably with that therapist I had. Actually, it's around the same time graduate school. Yeah. I think that really shifted things for me.
Is that why you said you like working with teens, right?
Yeah, that's a really special population for me.
For you, is it because just at that age, there's just a lot of, I don't know, why teenagers? Why that age? Why the demographic?
So, I think it was a tough time, like middle school, high school for me. And, again, like I said, like there was some misfires between me and my family as far as like what I needed. Yeah. Part of it was the experiences that we've discussed already, but part of it also was, my dad has more traditional Mexican values. So when I get like second gen clients, and it's been like not just like those that are Hispanic, there's similarities also within the Filipino culture, but helping to bridge the gap with teens and their parents when I'm able to, that's really meaningful to me.
That's awesome. Yeah. Working with teens, do you find that they are more moldable, more resistant?
So it's interesting. I find working with teenage girls a lot easier than the boys. The boys don't open up as much.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really hard. It's
Yeah.
well, not. I don't want to say speak in absolutes,
Yeah.
but for the most part, it's like pulling information.
Yeah.
I get really short answers, but yeah. So I think I've had more success with girls.
Yeah.
And the youngest I worked with is 12. So I go younger, but that age range is tricky sometimes.
For sure.
I like more like the 16.
There's some like teenagers I've worked with where I started to really see that I have to incorporate play into like my therapy, because with some of the, like, especially like the younger teens, like the 13-year-olds, there's sometimes some teens that like talking just isn't the way to go. And so I find myself like a little bit restricted, like, man, like I'm asking too many questions, or I'm not too many, but like the session is mostly me asking questions.
You feel like you're doing a lot of the
yeah.
work. Yeah.
And so like that's a long 50 minutes, you know, like and so I'm trying to challenge myself to expand my resources. And like maybe I got to bring in like some sand tray, or
I've had, when I was in person, coloring or letting them draw.
yeah.
So yeah, I feel you on that. But doing telehealth, it's hard to do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I was gonna ask, just in the sense for chronic pain, like for working with addiction, you get that it's a challenge, right? Because for us, a lot of times the chronic pain clients that are coming in, they already addicted to the opiates, so it's kind of a hard measure on, like, you know, we need to get you off this, but at the same time we also want to address their chronic pain. Or how much are you actually trying to just, like, in the sense, play off that you're in more pain than you're not? But your type of chronic pain, like what kind of clients, when you say like they're experiencing chronic pain, are we talking different disabilities? Is it,
Well, again, like it's not always about, like, I don't always have clients that it's chronic pain.
right? But it's
It's like conditions that don't go away.
got it. Okay.
Some
yeah.
of them can cause pain or discomfort, but I guess just trying to clarify if there was a particular question.
No, just, I mean, I guess just the different, when you say it's not just like, hey, I've been having multiple back surgeries. That's not what we're talking about. When we say, like, we're talking about different disabilities that they're experiencing.
Yeah,
right?
like, you know, like it can be, honestly, chronic conditions are, it's such a big umbrella. It can be,
Yeah, that's what I kind of want to explain.
again,
to
like it can be like what I have, cerebral palsy. I have discomfort in my leg all the time.
yeah,
It's always, but, or it can be having cancer. It can be having diabetes.
yeah,
It's something that you have that, again, chronic is essentially like it's long term.
right, yeah.
And it can be long term and go away, or it can be like, again, like I have epilepsy. Epilepsy is another one. But it can be a wide range. Honestly, we can think of like, you know, addiction in that sense,
Yeah,
right? But
right.
like, it's like more medical related
Yeah.
things.
Do you talk a lot about grief with your clients, like grief and like loss, like
Yeah.
loss of like the idea of maybe
Yeah.
what my life could have been, or
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because those are all feelings that I can, you know, resonate with. Because again, so part of it is there's some clients that'll come in with a chronic condition. And again, most people have other stuff too, like they'll have childhood stuff or whatnot. And they're talking to me about the childhood stuff. And I'll probe about like what their experience has been with the chronic illness.
Mm-hmm.
And they start to open up to like, oh shit, like this has impacted me in a way that I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Or yeah, like, you know, I've had clients where like a lot of the focus is the chronic condition in general,
Yeah.
and then come to find out it's actually the opposite, where more of the distress and pain that they're experiencing is from some other event.
Mm-hmm.
So it just really depends on the client.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's a client that they realize there's impact from the chronic illness and they didn't know about it before, it can feel like lost time
Yeah.
because they didn't work through it sooner. Or sometimes people will experience that loss because, again, not all providers have that specialty
Yeah.
and they weren't able to be helped. So that feels like lost time as well.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But again, it's also the loss of socialization, you know, the loss of being able to date for some people.
Yeah.
It can be a loss of employment
Yeah.
or being like there's this theme of restriction
Yeah.
that can come up.
Yeah. kind of going back to talking about what you needed growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, what, like, I don't know if there's any advice you'd give to like parents if they are dealing with, having a child that has like either a chronic condition or like how to like, I don't know how to think about that, or any tips about like what to do, how to
Feedback,
work
like how would
through
you talk
that.
to your kids?
Yeah, how would you? Because I'm thinking about like me and my wife have talked. We have 2 kids, right? And every time we go through we've gone through the pregnancy process. There's always these questions and decisions you have to make, right? Of like they'll ask you, do you want to take these exams, like to see if
Check
like
things
there's
out.
any possibility of like your child coming out with a chronic condition. So we've always talked and like, do we do this? Do we not? They'd always ask us, would you guys keep the baby? Would you not keep the baby? So there's all these like really tough questions. And so we've always talked about like, I think it'd be, for us anyway, it'd be really tough, like to have a baby with a chronic condition. But I think at the end of the day, we'd want to keep a baby, right? And like,
Yeah,
and
because
be
again,
there.
because there could be signs of a chronic condition, but again, even with cerebral palsy, it's such a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I got very, very lucky. With all the conditions I have, I'm very fortunate, which is odd to say.
Yeah.
Because there's some aspects of it that are not lucky.
Yeah.
But they're not as severe.
Yeah.
But again, just looking at cerebral palsy, you can see people like me that just have like a limp or, loss of function in the arm. But there's, on the other side, there's people in a wheelchair. They can't really eat. They need a lot more assistance.
Yeah.
But how do you know
How
what
do you
you're going to
know?
get?
Right.
Yeah.
So like if in asking that question, I think about it, and it's weird because if my parents were to have been told that and asked that,
Yeah.
there's a possibility I wouldn't be here, right? Like, and that right. Kind of,
Yeah.
like, are we less worthy because we're different?
Right.
But again, it's such a nuanced, complicated thing because you don't know.
Yeah. Something we went through during that decision process was I almost went through a little bit of a grieving myself before even having like knowing anything, but I kind of like grieving the idea of like, I got to check my idea of these like perceptions of what I think parenting is going to be, what I think raising a child is going to be in this world, because it could be different than I have in mind, right? Like I envision like me and my daughter like walking, going around somewhere, like playing soccer, and like that might not be the case, if you have a condition that comes up. And so sort of like grieving the idea of like, hey, like check yourself, and it's like just kind of see what this experience is going to be like without any like preconceived notions
but again,
or assumptions.
condition or not, like you got to check that.
Yeah.
Because some parents are like, oh, my kid's going to play football.
Exactly.
And, they're going to be a doctor.
These expectations are creating for them
and
already.
then the kid ends up living a life for the parent and not for themselves.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we go back though, because I don't think I answered your original question.
Yeah, I guess that's
which is the advice.
the advice. Yeah, like what advice you'd get. I mean,
Feedback,
feedback for parents. Yeah,
That's the therapist in me. I track.
I like it. It's good. Yeah.
It's hard for me to say, because again, it's interesting. I'm not a parent.
Yeah.
Right. But, and I think this is all encompassing whether you have a child with a chronic illness or not. But listen to understand. And that's really uncomfortable. Like, again, we do it day in and day out. It's hard to hold space. But a lot of people try to fix. Or it's not that bad, Or you're fine. You're just like, everyone else. Whatever the comment is of trying to make the kid feel better or make it go away.
That would feel so minimizing if that
like,
was me. Like, you're minimizing my experience.
Yeah, it's like validate. Even if it's super fucking uncomfortable for you, validate their feelings and get them to a therapist that can support them, or even around other children that they can relate to, so they don't feel so isolated.
And just like to like make it super simple, validating can be simple as like wow, like I can understand how that feels. Like I can see that's really hard for you, or like I'm so sorry, baby, that you feel this way. Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, fucking, like, I mean, obviously if they're little, you're not gonna say this, but essentially, like, I know it sucks.
This does suck.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard to stop there. Like, even right now as I'm saying it, it's hard to stop that. Yeah, this does suck. And not to not be like, but it's gonna be okay. You know?
Just embrace the suck because things suck.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you process and problem solve later.
Yeah. Wow.
But it should be separate. Like, validation should be the goal.
You know what I love about that statement is that we're making an assumption that I believe in people is that people are resilient. And that people like have the resources already within them to be able to move through pretty much anything in this world. And what I love about not fixing is that like the fixing will come. Like the way to get through this will come, and all you just got to do is make sure that they're not going through it alone.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's probably the best way to nurture those resilience mechanisms, right? And so it's so I don't know, that's what I love about that message.
tell my clients all the time, I don't have the answers, I'm here to help you find them. You know, they're inside of you. We really, like, a lot of the work is a lot of it is like I just said that twice, that's funny.
We'll cut that out, no repeating words.
Perfectionism.
It's helping to expand people's perceptions, like what they're seeing. Like, we tend to zoom in on something and get stuck there, and it's like, no, let's look over here or look over there. Even I've had that, like, oh shit, I didn't think about that when I'm in therapy, right? And when they start to consider these things that they've missed, those connections start to come. So we're instrumental to their growth, but we don't cause it, you know, like, it's more them than us, the client.
That makes sense. I think I want to thank you because I feel like I became a better therapist just like listening and having this conversation with you. Because I think before we started talking, I was thinking about, like, you know, working with clients with chronic illnesses. I'm like, that sounds really scary to me, you know, because I don't have one, because I don't know what it's like, but like just having this better understanding of like, it's validation. It's like everything you do with every client that comes in here. Like, it's like there's nothing different, like, you know. And so I'm like, okay, like that makes this so much like
our needs are no different than yours.
Yes. So I don't know. I think
the way that we get them met might look different, but the needs are the same.
Yeah, we're human. We have this commonality aspect, which we've said, you know. So
we want to feel understood. We want to belong. You know, pretty basic.
Same universal needs.
Yeah, for sure. So.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else that
no, man, just thank you so much, Liz, for coming on the show. Is there anything else? I know you brought up at the intro, like your private
practice.
Yeah. So anything else you'd like to plug?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody feels like they could benefit from working with me, you can check out my Instagram. Again, it's Resilient Lotus Psychotherapy. It's got a link to my profile on Latinx. There's also an article that kind of shares my life story.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah.
And you do a bunch of lives, and so like there's like it's so cool that
I'm starting to.
You're starting to. There's getting people to really know who you are and like you know what you're specializing in. You said you have an IG, so we'll promote that we'll put that on the description for people to watch as well.
Sure.
And you're taking clients, so
yes, I am accepting clients.
So very cool.
Cash pay.
Thank you so much for
need that money, cash money.
No insurance right now.
Not right now. Maybe soon. Yeah. You do in person and virtual?
No, virtual.
Virtual only. Okay, virtual. So thank you so much for coming
out.
Thanks,
appreciate
guys.
it.